speak about that. So Sylvia was asking about the workshop and specifically about the one constellation where Fenya was called in. I remember that one, so I can answer that. When you work with the morphogenetic field, since you are not concepting anything, or you know, you're not thinking about what you see and what is the next step, you are going with the morphic field, which is all about what is this module's teaching, module 2. It is also very likely common and desirable that when you facilitate, you forgot about what you have facilitated immediately, because it is not in your memory. You know, you just go with the field, you are in the moment with everybody, with the information, and once it's done, it's done. There's nothing that need to stick, you know, unless somebody else is reminding you, and then maybe a memory or fractions of memories come back. That's possible. So I do remember Fenya's, because there was a you know, I said that before, there is no mistakes in the field, only misunderstandings. And with this constellation, that had to do with the hoarding, I think, was it?
Yes.
That was the hoarding.
Yes.
Now I can share that with you, because I remember it now, because I had a gathering with with another group, and she was a friend of the hoarder, and she shared what happened afterwards. So that was very interesting. So, and I'm sure I can share that here in the training group. So my Linda's coming through, and Talita, wonderful, wonderful. So we're talking about the workshop and the constellation with the hoarder, just because Sylvia asked a question, how it comes that I bring in people that nobody knows who they are, and how this happens. And I was just sharing that this is exactly what we are talking about in module 2. That's very appropriate that we discuss it at the beginning now. So we go with the field, and obviously I go with the morphogenetic field, and there are no mistakes, as you know, no, just misunderstandings. And the constellation with the hoarder was such a misunderstanding, because she has named 2 daughters, and she has named one representative for the older daughter, and for the younger daughter she has named Fenya. Remember? But then, as it happens, guided by the field, Virna misunderstood and thought she is representing the younger daughter.
Yes.
So I asked Fenya to unmute and be part of it, thinking or expecting her to be the younger daughter. And then Virna showed up as a younger daughter. So immediately, this is what I teach today, acknowledging what is. So immediately, you cannot dismiss these things. You know, this is very important information from the field.
So you don't say, that's not you, please stop out. You don't do those things.
Never, ever.
Okay.
No.
You just allow it to come.
Yeah, if you work with the field, you work with the field. Otherwise, you wouldn't work with the field, right? You have in your mind, you have, you know, a concept, and you want to follow that. That's not Bert Hellinger's family constellation at all. So, Fenya was in the field, but not representing anybody. But she was, although she didn't know, I immediately saw in her another child. So that was missing, right? Now, as you now know from the constellation, that our client has highly resisted the fact that there was a 3rd child and there was another relationship. And when you remember, the child, Fenya, wanted to be in between the others, right? She couldn't be before, after, she was in between, but the client has insisted that her relationship was with somebody after. But we trust the fee, we know it's not true. So you never believe the client. You never believe the client. You cannot dismiss an information from the field because the client is saying something else. That's very, very important. Because otherwise, you're not doing the work. You're just trying to please somebody's mind, ego mind, basically, right? Okay. So, you all know how it ended. So she's a friend of one of my trainees who I had a gathering with 2 days ago. And she shared what happened afterwards, so I can share with you. It was very funny. So the client, I call her the client, she said to Virna, which is her friend, now you know my secret. Don't tell anybody. Well, and also because she was denying it until the end, and her whole hoarding problem was also something that was not really acknowledged as a problem until recently. So she likes to keep secrets, obviously. Hmm? That's just what it is. So if she wants to, and she has, and then the other most important information is she has not signed up for the workshop. She has been invited by Virna. So that's always very, very dangerous, right? Very dangerous. So in this
Dangerous
case,
how? Like not free will, or it is her free
so it
will
is
to come?
dangerous because the people who are not putting effort in there to come to the workshop. So it's not the idea. Secondly, they don't make the effort to book it. Thirdly, they don't pay for it. They are often the ones who are very resistant to the morphogenetic field and the informations that come, and they can be very disturbing in a workshop, right? And so as a matter of rule, I say never ever allow that to happen. Everybody who wants a constellation, one-on-one or workshop or whatnot, has to sign up for themselves, pay for themselves, make the time available for themselves. They cannot be invited. Right. Now, she invited her. I did not know that. You go with the field. It's all meant to be. The important message is obviously what the information the field provided very clearly was very true, and she knew it. She didn't want to admit it for some reason. So that's a very good example. And if this is now healing for her or not, that is solely depending on her willingness to serve her family system. Right? That's it. And that's completely out of my hands, completely out of anybody's hand. And she's absolutely self-responsible for whatever happens now. And she might never go to a family constellation again. Because she certainly thought that she can control it. All right, so that was a recap of that. And this brings us to, oh, by the way, how do you find the new login section, the training community? Yeah, you like it? It's good to work with? You all found the link, so that's a plus. Very good. Okay, awesome. So just use the chat room there in your group for really everything you want to share. I'm reading that too, right? And I might comment on that. Okay. So let's go into today's teaching content. I'll share the screen. And move you up there. Hang on. Oh, wrong view. Just a second. Okay. Now I got everybody. So Radita is not joining us today?
No.
Okay. All right. So the module 2 is titled with Finding What Mends. Mending in the real sense of it, no mending, putting things that are broken together, bridging and all of this, right? So what exactly are we looking at? Is we are looking at the power of words. As you all know, and you have felt in your own constellations as a representative, as a client, and also as an observer, there are words that are immensely moving the souls, right? And Bert Hellinger has found out, and he actually made a joke out of it because he was a psychotherapist before, briefly. he disliked being a psychotherapist as much as he disliked to be a priest. Must have been quite similar in some ways. So he was joking about it. He said he has revolutionized the psychotherapy. He only needs 3 words to deal with any mental issue. And the 3 words are yes, please, and thank you, which is in German 1 word, danke. Right? And he said the only, like the art of healing is just to know when to apply the right word in which order. Right? And this is very, very true. And that's exactly what you're going to learn in module 2. And that is really all you need to do to start facilitating constellations. And you know by now, this work is in the essence really easy. And you don't need to learn much. You just need to count ever to 3. 3. So you have 3 words. You have 3 dynamics. You have, what else was 3? You have 3 parts in a constellation. Everything is only 3, right? So it's not like you don't need 1,100 different things to know. So these 3 words are yes, please, and thank you. And we have 3 parts in module 2. So every part is dedicated to one of these words, what it means, how do we apply it, what is the order of the word, when is it appropriate to use, when not, what are the varieties, like what are the different ways of saying the same word, and everything that's related to that. So we are looking at this one, first of all, the orders of words, then specifically, we are looking at the word yes. We are looking at the 3 patterns of relationship, another 3 patterns of relationship. We are looking at the dynamics in family systems, which are also 3, and we pick one out of it and look at it closer, which is called reparations or atonements for my sins. That's one of the 3 dynamics. In part 2, we are looking at the other word, please, and the second dynamic, rather me than you. And we are looking at the morphogenetic field and at fatal diseases or severe diseases, severe and fatal diseases. That will be next week. And part 3 in 3 weeks, we are looking at the 3rd word, which is thank you. We are looking at the 3rd dynamic, which is I follow you. We are looking at finding what mends, like the practical work. We're looking at how to apply words, gestures, eyes, and movements. So let's start with today, the healing power of yes. First of all, the groundbreaking work of Bert Hellinger is all summarized in his first book, which is translated to English as Acknowledging What Is. And if you have it, read it. If you have not have it yet, source it. It is super old, maybe 40 years by now. It's still the best one. And it is also not only of interest when you are facilitating constellations, also for just for personal growth. It's super interesting. Who has read it yet? Joyce?
I'm
Melinda,
still
what
in
is
the
it?
middle of it.
You're in the
I'm not
middle.
done.
Anybody else had raised their hands? I can't see Talita and Robin for some reason. They have shut off their videos. Ah, here you are.
What's the name of the book?
Acknowledging What Is.
Okay, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
our book is still in the mail, Maya.
Ah, well, that's good. Well, at least you found it. So, Joyce, would you like to just quickly share how you like it or what you think about it?
I'm still in the middle of the book, but so far what I've gathered, like he is very straightforward, and he's also like he present love in a very direct, straightforward, practical manner.
Mhm.
I find it very. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are some things, especially about human conscience. He mentioned that was very enlightening for me, and it makes sense. Yeah. So far, I'm enjoying the book a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Oh, glad you do. Yeah, it is really a great book.
It's not complicated. Like it's actually quite. It's a very once you've seen his point of view, it's actually quite easy to grasp what he's trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it is easy. Life is easy to be understand when you take all the fluff away
Yeah.
and all this complicated mind stuff.
Mhm.
It's not so difficult. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for your feedback, Joyce. So this is why I like to call this part also acknowledging what is, because we follow as much as we can Bert Hellinger's teaching, of course. So we are talking about acknowledging what is and what that means for our work. We are talking about the orders of work. Now you know the orders of love from the first module. You will know the orders of helping in the third module. And this module is about the orders of words. We're talking about the word yes in specific, the 3 patterns of relationships, the 3 dynamics in family systems, one of which is reparations for my sins, which is a translation from English, obviously, as close to the German original as possible for me. I'm not following translations for somebody else's English translations. I don't know, because I don't know these people and I don't know why they come up with this. I translated myself, if that's okay for you. So let's go into it. Acknowledging what is. What does that mean? It is so important because it is always the start of a family constellation. And it's not only the start of a constellation, it's also the middle of a family constellation, it's also the end of a family constellation. You always acknowledge what is. You never make something up. You never indicate, you never sublimely, offer something. You acknowledge what is. What you learn is to be such a precise perceiver that you know what is when you see it. I mean, you cannot only learn, you have to experience it, you have to, have experience with it, but that is actually the work. You are perceiving and know what is. And then all you need to do is introduce one of the 3 words to the representatives who are in the dynamic and ask them to say that. And that is the healing, the healing process is taking part. So acknowledging what is super important. That is the beginning of everything. It is fundamental for the movement of souls. The souls will never move in an environment where the truth is not spoken. Yeah, they cannot. They cannot. They are not the untruth or the not truth or however you want to call it is a thing of the mind, as you could clearly see in our hoarder, right? It's and that is the beauty about the work. If you're donating your life to follow Bert Hellinger's work for your own healing and to help others, you will be unable to think or speak of the untruth. It's just not a fit energetically, you know, the frequency, and that is also in itself healing, because we are suffering from too many things that are made up. So this fundamental movement is what we are seeing when a representative starts to release. For example, it can only release energies or emotions as a representative when it hit home, right? It's impossible. Nothing would happen if it doesn't hit home. If you suggest to a representative to say a word that is not correct, you always see a puzzled face. It's like this. That's what you get. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but then you know, okay, I'm on the. We have a German saying, on the wood way. I'm on the wrong way, and then you probably try exactly the opposite. It might be the truth to what you have suggested, and that is not a mistake. That's not even a misunderstanding. That is the work. You need to find it sometimes. Sometimes it is not so obvious. Yeah. So sometimes you have to find it. And this is great. So you suggest somebody to say yes, and nothing happens, and then you say, oh, okay. But now you're not suggesting no, because that's not one of the powerful words, right? So we go through that. You're suggesting one of the others, please or thank you. Okay. So acknowledging what is first of all to find what is true. And this is why you ask the representative. You say, okay, say to him or her, yes. And then you ask him. Sometimes you see immediately that it hits home, so you don't need to ask. But sometimes you don't see a reaction and you ask, is this true? Right? And then maybe the representative takes a moment and says, actually, yes, it is true. So you would ask him to reaffirm it more from the heart. Say from the heart, say it yes, or say it 3 times, or do something to make it stronger. Or the representative would say, I'm not sure. I don't think so. And then you say, okay, that's it. You know, it's not yes. You know, it's not that kind of dynamic. So you say, okay, try please. Right. And then that would be maybe it. So finding what is true, and the second step is to admit it, right? Admitting, we admit something by saying the word that is telling the truth. And that is one of our 3 words. It's not a story, it's not a long sentence, it's nothing of that. It's just one of the 3 words. And by admitting, so finding the truth and admitting it with the right word, your work is done, basically, right? Not much more to it. When is a word so powerful that it moves the soul? It is often hard to do, because saying the truth is often, especially if it's the first time, hard to do. It often sounds harsh, right? Because you can't dull it down with some pink cotton candy or whatnot. You know, it's impossible. Or put some bunny ears on it. So you can't do that in a family constellation, obviously, because nothing would happen. So it has to sound harsh. It can also be unconventional. So there are lots of ways to say yes. It not always needs to be this plain 3-letter word. It could be another way to say it. So it can be unconventional, and that's all okay. Observation is the key, observing the dynamic. This is why you need to be comfortable with silence and holding space, right? And your meditation practice will help heaps with that, right? So that's one thing the facilitator needs to be comfortable with, is holding space and be silent and just observe. While everybody else from the participants properly expecting a sort of a performance. So that the admitting of the right word, or the admitting what is done with the words, yes, I did that, or yes, I see this, or I see you, or yes, I feel this or that, whatever it is. Yes, I feel sad. Yes, I feel anger. That's the most common one, sadness and anger. That is admitting, and that has to be said. Just by observing it, that's not enough for the healing movement. Admitting means it needs to be said. Having said that, in the later work of Bert Hellinger, he discovered something like, it was very experimental, the multidimensional family constellation. And there was nothing admitted and nothing spoken. It was completely silent, but it was like 30 people in the constellation. And nobody knew who it was, and they just were giving time, like a lot of time, like an hour or so, to move. And then everybody sat down. Yeah. And of course that works also brilliantly, but that is nothing I think you can really do virtually at all. Other than the workshop participants would fall asleep in their chair, maybe. And I haven't seen him doing that a lot. So it's not that, so he did that a few times, but it was not like his favorite thing to do. So words are important, admitting is important. After you have observed what is, then to admit it with words. And that is acknowledging what is. And that is half of the work done. 50% is already done, or even more. So let's speak about the orders of words. So we have the 3 words, yes, thank you, and please. And we need to look at the relationship of these words and the orders of love to find the orders of words. So the orders of words depend on the sequence in which you ask somebody to say them. It depends on the relationship that this representative is in with somebody else. And this is why we have to talk about the 3 different relationships that are possible in a family constellation. Then you have the sentences of resolution, as we call that, which are also have the same energy as yes, please, or thank you, but they may express it more specific, right? More specific. So let's look at the 3 pattern of relationships, because we need to know about them and we need to know what pattern we are looking at to apply the words, the 3 strong words, in the right order. So first of all, we have the relationship from parent to child. Either mother or father or both to a child. Here is the first word, yes. What is yes? Yes, acknowledging what is. Yes, you are my child. Yes, I have born you. Yes, I raise you, I nourish you, I care for you in one way or the other. Right? So yes is the first word in this relationship. The child, you know that now, we worked so much on it. The child towards the mother or father, the first word is always please, because the child is needy. The child needs the parents to survive. The parents don't need the child to survive, right? So the first word of a child towards the parents is always yes. Sorry, please. Always please. So after the please, when the please has been said so often and so deep from the heart that it has become a living truth, yeah, then the next word, order of words in this relationship is child to parent. Thank you. Thank you for everything he or she has received, obviously, right? Thank you for all the care, for the love, for the nourishment, for everything. So that would be the second one. And often there is not a yes necessary anymore, but it could be, especially when the parents are getting older and wanting to leave, that the child is able to say yes to letting go of the parents, right? So, or not even if they pass away, but also before, when the child wants to go its ways independently from the parents, there needs to be a yes. No, to be, because please and thank you are two words that are binding in one way or the other. Now we will talk about that. So in a please and in a thank you, there is a relationship. Relationship meaning one is relating to the other, right? But in a yes, there is no relationship. There is just acknowledging what is, acknowledging that somebody goes their own way, or there is no relationship needed for a yes. Then we have the third pattern of relationship, and that is with equals, partner to partner. And I don't mean romantic partners. I just mean equals. We talked about that, like the lake situation, where the love doesn't flow from one to the other, but this is equal. It's a lake, right? So that could be, anybody who is meeting face to face, any adult to adult, anybody who is not a parent or a child, would be fall under this relationship. Oh, Robin is falling out. Let's see. No, Robin. Why is that? Ah, Joy, you come in as Robin. That's all right.
No, it's by default on the computer. But yeah, sorry, my internet somehow it drops.
Yeah, techniques.
Yeah.
Who knows? Right. So the partner, because I'm meeting equal to equal, the first word is yes. The yes, and just as a matter of example, we choose romantic relationships because it's easier to picture that. Yeah. So when you are choosing a partner, what needs to be there first? There needs to be first a yes. Yes, I like you. Yes, I want you. Yes, I'm ready for you. Yes, I'm open for you. I'm available. That's a yes. And then, of course, when you go marry, you have to say this yes again, because that is needed, to form a relationship at the beginning. That is a yes. Yes, I see you. Yes, I'm open. I have time for you. That's a yes. Then the next one is a please, because if you want to deepen a relationship, you need to have the please. The please is asking for something, right? Please give me your time. Please come and visit me. Please sit here with me. Please, whatever. Do this or that with me. Please give me your affection. That's a please. That's the beginning of a relationship after it has been acknowledged that there is such a thing as a relationship. This is deepening the relationship. And then when the relationship goes towards an end, then you have to balance out whatever is not balanced. Remember the last module, with a thank you, to be able to leave and go your own way. So that's the right order of words in a relationship that is face to face. Yes, please, and thank you. In the relationship from child to the mother, it's please, thank you, yes. And in the relationship from the parent to a child, there's only yes. Because there is neither please nor thank you appropriate. You know, if you think of a parent, you know, where would there be a please? Where would there be a thank you? Right? The love flows down from the parents to the children. Doesn't need to be balanced at all with anything like this. Just needs to be passed on to the next generation or to something else. So, the sentence of resolution. Every sentence of resolution is either just this word we're talking about, or the word combined with more information, or a sentence that has in the essence the same meaning as the word, but it not uses the word. That's all a sentence of resolution. And the sentence of resolution is the family constellation work. Find the right sentence of resolution spoken from the right representative to the other right representative is the healing movement. They never come from the mind. You cannot think these up. This is why they sound, especially, I don't know the English translation so well, but if you read the German literature, or you know, you are you know, watching Bert Hellinger's work, they are really strange sometimes, these sentences. You know, they are not eloquent or well educated or the opposite route or anything like that. They are just strange often, but they speak to the soul. And because you don't, and I suggest a couple of sentences that Bert Hellinger is using all the time, and I think that would be enough to use it. You don't need to make up your own. Just with time, when you do that for years and years and years and years, you will have your own swing, your own, you know, obviously we all do that. Yeah, it becomes more individual, but these sentences, they are all proved watertight and are good to go, good to use. Sentences of resolution are always concerned with either reconciliation, which we call also the flow of love, or with honor and respect. Anything that is not concerned with that is not family constellation. You know, that is like a chit chat situation or a psychotherapy where two people are talking it over, something like that, you know. Especially you have done, or you have done this, or you have done that, or something like that. That's not family constellation. Because it's not concerned with reconciliation or honor and respect. It's normally the opposite. It's concerned with blame and demand, and what else do we have? Dismissal and well, you get the picture. So that is not family constellation. That will never be in family constellation. If you ever hear these kinds of sentences in family constellation, then the facilitator is on the wrong track there. Right? It's not going to heal. So reconciliation or honor and respect, that's all we are concerned with. And if neither of these sentences in a situation comes to your mind, then the only appropriate thing to do is to be quiet, silent, and observing, and allowing the field to reveal more information. So sentences of resolution are very simple, really, really, I mean it, really simple. They speak directly to the soul, not to the mind. They are either true, meaning they're reflecting the energy as is, or not true. And in this way, you often find the truth in the opposite sentence. So you just reverse the sentence and see how that goes. They depend on the relationship, as we said before. And now we're looking at the yes and all the facades of yes and the variations and sentences of resolution that you can build with or around the yes sentence. A very common one Bert Hellinger is using all the time is, I take this life with everything it entails. That's a yes. That's a very strong yes. And it is advisable when you watch the recordings that you really learn the sentence. So you have them like, you know, the plumber's toolbox, they're in your toolbox. When you start to work, that you can just open your toolbox and put them out like a screwdriver. You know, every sentence is one of your tools. So I take this life with everything it entails. A very, very strong one is, yes, it's also, I take this life even at the cost of yours. Often hard to say, but that is the truth in some constellations, right? And remember, there is no good or bad. And there's definitely no guilt or shame in family constellations. Yeah. Nobody is making, is in a family constellation, how can I put it? There is no judgment, you know? Things happen and it is okay. Whatever has happened is okay. You know, nobody there, you know, needs to be ashamed of anything that happens. It's just life, just being life. It's just part of life. So in this case, often I take this life even at the cost of yours is a very appropriate sentence. And there could be, look, there could be a mother who had to abort a child because otherwise the mother would die. The doctors say, obviously, right? That was a diagnosis, right? And then there could be a consolation when you see that the child is suffering greatly under this murder, if you will, yeah? Or the mother. And then the healing sentence is when the mother says to the child, I take this life even at the cost of yours. Has a very strong healing towards the child and the mother and the whole family system. Because that's the only sentence, the only truth that hasn't been acknowledged so far. And this is why it would heal. So another sentence is, it's my death and my faith, and I alone carry it. That's also very often in the family constellation. When you see about the three dynamics in family constellation, this most certainly always, in 95% the cases, is somebody has died, a not normal death. Yeah, that is the trauma in the family soul, most cases. And so this will come up. It's my death and my faith, and I alone carry it. If you have a descendant who wants to take that over, yeah? Who feels like, you know, often suicides are in a lineage. So a descendant of a generation where there was a suicide is also suicidal or even commits suicide and so on. That's very often. And here to acknowledge from the first one to say, I am responsible and I'm alone and it's my faith and it's not your concern has a strong healing effect on the family soul. By leaving it to me, you are honoring my life and faith. And that's very true. Remember, the sentences of resolution are either concerned with the flow of life or honor and respect. And that is honor and respect, of course. Because with yes, remember, yes is not the word where you have please and thank you, where you have relationships that need this exchange. The yes not, right? The yes is only acknowledging what is. So when do we apply the word or the sentences of resolutions that are yes, and when not is also important to know. So when a movement, a relationship, or a dynamic needs to be acknowledged as it is, as the truth, we need the yes, of course. That's the most important thing. When there is an unbalance or an entanglement and you still observe it, it's not clear, the yes is not appropriate, right? There's either please or thank you and all the variation of these words, not the yes. How to apply yes? Acknowledging what is, that's easy. When we want to move forward. So sometimes a family constellation is stuck. And it's not the matter of a family secret, which we talk about. It's a matter of something is not acknowledged as a truth that is, so to speak, the first step for any kind of movement. So there is the yes, the healing movement, or it's igniting the healing movement. If in a family constellation, a representative wants or should get the support of a parent or an ancestor, yeah. So it is not that the ones who want support says please, obvious, but the ancestor would say yes, right? That's a yes. That's the yes. Yes, I'm going to give you my blessings. It's not a please, I'm going to give you my, and it's not a thank you, I'm going to give you my blessings. It's a yes, I'm going to give you my blessings. It's the beginning of a relationship. We talked about that, the mystical yes in the church or wherever in which ritual, when two are getting married. That's the same outside of these cultures, even if it's not been said. A lot of relationships, and when you deal with clients who have relationship issues, are suffering from the fact that there was never a yes at the beginning. It was just not there. This unconditional commitment to say, yes, I want to be in this relationship. Yes, I want to be your partner. Yes, I want to be with you no matter what. That was often not in the relationship. And then, of course, sure enough, there will be problems in the relationship later on. And the good thing is, in a family constellation, when you have representatives for this couple, you will clearly see that the yes hasn't been spoken. And if you don't see this with all this knowledge, you ask them to say that, right? And if they can't do it, then you know already where to start. So when not to apply yes is when there is still a need of love. That's the most common dynamic when you not apply yes. So when there is this need of love, which you often see in a relationship, 90% of relationship cases are, and where the yet hasn't been said, is because at least one of the partner is still in need of love like a child. So this is when the mother comes in to play. This is when we always look for a representative for the mother. Sometimes the father, most of the time the mother. So there is no yes, obviously. So when in a relationship one cannot say yes to the other, what are we doing? Hmm? We ask them.
Question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go back. Avi, go. What are we doing?
Sorry, what did you were asking? If one cannot say?
Yeah, you have a man and a woman. Let's make it easy. You have a man and a woman represented in a relationship, and you suggest to them to say to each other yes, and one cannot say yes. What are you doing?
You call the mother, that's what you explained, because there's a block of the flow of love from that person who can't say yes because they have a disrupted movement with the mother.
Because they are needy child. Exactly. And then you work only, you disregard the relationship and you work in the mother-child dynamic. And then when this has been moved somehow, then you bring the partner back in, and then this would have changed. And then you ask again, say yes, and now most likely they can say. When not to apply yes is when the victim cannot look at the perpetrator. Now, when we talk about victim-perpetrator dynamics, which is always very challenging, but it is very common, obviously, in family constellation, makes at least a third of all constellations. You would see later on that the dynamic is always reconciliation, right? So perpetrator victim dynamic is reconciliation, not honor and respect. So when there is no way for the victim to reconcile with the perpetrator or the other way around, in the beginning of a family constellation, obviously you cannot ask them to say yes. You have to work with the tools that you will learn to get to this point where they can say yes to each other. Because victim perpetrator obviously not parent child or child parent relationships, so they can only be equal. The lake situation, right? So the yes is there important, but because of the hurt that has been done, and often because of social unacceptance, the yes is kind of not available just yet, right? And that was very controversial with Bertelling as well. He got in the 90s and in the early 2000s so much bad press, because everybody was thinking of a psychotherapist and how you not re-traumatize the victim, by making them look at their perpetrator and all this. You might know this, and if you don't know it, forget it, because you don't need to know it, because we are not working with the actual victim and an actual perpetrator. We are working with family dynamic. The victim and perpetrator was probably 500 years ago, or 100 years ago, or maybe just 3 generations ago. It doesn't matter, So there's no re-traumatizing possible between, souls who have already passed on. When you have an actual victim, let's say what you of course have quite a lot, I don't know in Asia, but definitely in Western Europe, or here in Australasia, or Oceania, I would say, Oceania, is this family abuse. It's very common. And when you have a client who has been abused as a child, especially sexually or mentally abused by a family member, then it's not appropriate that this actual client is facing a representative of the perpetrator and says yes, right? So that's obviously not the right thing to do. But when we are talking about the victim perpetrator situation and reconciliation, we are talking about historic events in a family system that were unsolved because of that. and they have an impact of the living. So for example, if you have a traumatized adult who was abused as a child, and you see this dynamic, chances are that this is a repetition from an earlier dynamic are very high, because nothing is by chance. So what you would do in this case, you would go back generations, find the victim there and the perpetrator, reconcile, help them to reconcile, to find together, and then the victim of in this generation that is with you in the workshop will feel a relief without ever meeting their own perpetrator. You see how that goes? That's the beauty of the work. And this is why we don't need to be concerned with these problems they have in psychotherapy, because they're only working with one person and their issues that they have. And that's tricky. So, the yes towards parents. So the yes towards parents comes after the please, and then the thank you, and then the yes. And there could be very challenging relationships, children who have been badly abused by the parents, right? But still, if they don't find the way to their parents, they are cut off of life. So there's this layer, or this level of social observation and morals and everything else, where you can't, you just to leave. You have to leave your parents when you can. And then there is the other layer, the deeper layer of the soul. The soul child still needs the parent, right? And now this has to be juggled in a family constellation. And the good thing is, if you have representatives, it's easy. If you have only your client in a one-on-one situation, it's not so easy. So when this dynamic has been moved along towards, forgiving equal forgetting, then at the end, there will be honor and respect, right? Towards the parents. And then the child can say to the parents, I honor and respect you as my parent. And this is just acknowledging what is. I mean, there is no denial that these are the parents. So, you cannot say, no, you're not my parents, even if you don't want them as your parents. It's still not true. The yes towards parents is also very good. We use it all the time. To get things moving is, you are the big one and I am the small one. I'm the little one. That's in acknowledging what is. That's the yes. But this can often this has to follow the please and the thank you. Although you sometimes see in the family constellation that I start with this, I could maybe start with that, but that is just to make sure that the client or the person I'm working with is acknowledging that they are the parents, because they have still a block in their mind and thinking, they are not my parents. Kind of a dismiss. And then the please is not possible, because the relationship as such is not acknowledged. So when you know, or when you need the word yes, then you know also when to apply it. I honor you and your life journey, your soul purpose. That's the other thing. These parents who were so abusive to the children, they were children once as well, innocent children, right? So they are on their own soul journey, and they are responsible for whatever has been, whatever they did. So this can be also acknowledged by the child. What goes on between the two of you has nothing to do with me. It's a very common acknowledging what is of the child towards the parent. Because as you know, parents came first. Second order of love. Who comes first? They came first, and the child should never be concerned with what they have with each other. That's important. If they are entangled. That was kind of the constellation we had with Talita in the workshop. I acknowledge the love between you and am not in a place to judge that. It's a long yes towards the parents. Because the love between somebody raised their hand. There, Joyce, you go.
Sorry, I have
No
a
worries.
quick question.
Yes.
It's I can see that, whatever the parents do to the child, you cannot deny the fact that they are the child's parents. But what if the child is not ready to say, I honor and respect you as my parents? I mean, can the child just acknowledge the fact that they are the parents, like I acknowledge you as my parents? But to honor and respect, it's just a choice, right? I mean, if the parents have abused the child, it's difficult to say those words.
With acknowledging to honor and respect the parents, you're not acknowledging what they do, but you acknowledge them for what they are. They came first.
Yeah. So I acknowledge what they are. They came first, but so it's
you're
necessary
you're not making good for what they do. Okay. You're not excusing with honor and respect. You're not excusing, whatever they do. That's not what this means. No? It just means whatever they have done, and the family constellation is not the place to judge good or bad. You may walk out of the family constellation and think they are horrible parents. This girl, gosh, this poor girl. And you may very welcome to do that. We're all human. Yeah. But when you're facilitating a family constellation, this cannot be your thoughts. You will not be able to do the work.
Okay.
But as soon as you walk out there, you might as well think that. Okay. So another yes towards the parent is an obvious thing. Without you, I won't exist. So that is when children have a very severe interrupted movement towards the mother, which we talk in module 4 about in great detail. The only thing they can say is often when they start to move is, or to ignite the first small movement is to, without you, I won't exist. It's normally something everybody can say. Or the same as you gave me life, same thing. Or you can, find anything in your own words that has the same meaning. It's short, it's to the point, has no fluff with it, no judgment, and that would be good homework. Maybe you think of 3 sentences that you can add to the list. What would be a yes towards the parent? That starts with I. Anybody spontaneously enough to say a word, a sentence?
I accept what is. Or is that difficult as well?
No, I accept what is. Yeah, it's not difficult. It's a bit indifferent, but yeah, it is.
Is that a yes?
It's a yes. It is a yes, definitely. So it's a little bit. Look, I don't know what's going on, but say that. Yes, Yoda.
How about if the statement would be, I acknowledge your love, like for the child to the parent.
Yes, to
That
me,
would be
yeah,
nice.
your love to
Yeah.
me. Yeah, that's a lovely yes. Yeah, absolutely. Or I see your love for me. That's a very strong yes. Very good. Maybe one more. No pressure. It's not an exam. That would be horrible. All right, just write it down in your notebook if something comes to your mind. So now the parents, the yes towards the children. The most obvious, so the greatest love that a parents can give to their children is to give them the freedom to be how they want to be. Can we agree on that? That's the greatest yes, the greatest love of the parents. So then a yes would be, I give you my blessings on your way. Whatever it is, your own way. You're free to do whatever you want to do. It's a great yes. My love will always be with you, meaning whatever you do. It's also yes, parent, child. I will always look at you with love. It's also lovely sentence of resolution. I'm here when you need me. Yes, I'm your parent, obviously. I will always help you. And again, there are much more sentences that you might want to write down in your notebook. And think about it so you have it in your plumber's box when you go facilitating. All right, we make an exercise before we go in the break. And I was thinking of having groups of 3, but one is missing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Radita is missing. So we have one group of 2 and 2 groups of 3. So we want to apply the word yes, and we make a little facilitating situation. So the whole exercise is 9 minutes, and we make breakout rooms. And you're in a group of three. One is the helper, the one who's facilitating. One is a representative of a parent, and the third one is him or herself. Yeah. So the one which we call the client can choose if the other one is representing the mother or the father. And then the third person is the facilitator. And what you do as a facilitator is you ask them. So now this is it. You ask them to connect. You can make a screenshot if you want to. I make the list. Hang on, you can make a screenshot. So first of all, you as a facilitator, you ask them to connect with each other. You know, to connect with the field, to connect with each other, looking in the eyes or not, whatever, however they want to do it. And then you as a facilitator, in the role of the facilitator, you're observing the dynamic between them two. You know, what's the dynamic? What's the right word? Is there a yes, either from the parent to the child or from the child to the parent? Then you decide who has to say yes. Yeah, as a facilitator. So you suggest to one of them, say yes. After a while, take your time. And then you observe or you ask if this is true. And wait for the answer. And if it wasn't true, then you suggest to say the yes to the other. That doesn't necessarily mean that there is any yes, but you try it. Because it also, the result of the dynamic can be there is no yes. So again, there's nothing to achieve, no good and bad. It's just you are practicing to observe a dynamic and if the word yes would be the right one to apply or not. And from whom to whom. So then after 3 minutes, I message you to swap, and then you swap roles. So everybody is a facilitator. And the group of 2, obviously, you have a bit longer, because you're. So how do we do the group of 2? You're still representing parent and yourself, and maybe the representative of the parent is also facilitating. Yeah, let's see how that goes. Who wants to be in the group of 2? Hands up, because then I can assign that to the room. Anybody is volunteering for the small group? Otherwise, it's gonna be random. Okay, all right. All good? No questions asked? Do you have a screenshot?
Can I see the yes from the children again? I want a screenshot.
From the children. Yes, from the children. Let me see. Yes, towards.
Yes.
Oh, hang on. Towards the children.
Towards the parents.
Hang on. You towards the parents? Is what you want?
Yes.
Oh, hang on. This was too quick.
Okay. Thanks.
And then another slice.
Okay. I got it. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So stop sharing. Breakout rooms.
Melinda and Sylvia volunteered to be in the group of 2.
Okay. So Melinda and Sylvia. Okay.
Okay, so I go with Yoda and okay.
Not random.
I've
Okay,
taken
now.
an initiative.
So you're assigned. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now you go, and the time is counting. Okay. So tell me, how was it?
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
All
A
right.
little
Very
bit,
good.
a little bit challenging because of the time constraint, and because you know when you observe the dynamic, like you see more than one aspect that should be addressed, I suppose. But yeah, it was good. It was good practice.
So
Something happened during the facilitation. Is that also part of the morphic field?
for example,
Like my sister came in and started like, and I'm just like, no, like, just things that was out of my control.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and in one way or the other, it will be part, but it's also trapped to fall into to overemphasize this things. So it's
sometimes
simple,
it can be natural, like the Fenya thing, and sometimes it might just be nothing, or if you can get some symbolism out of it.
Yeah, you can find symbolism in anything, but sometimes it's not helping to find meaning in something. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. So tell me, who was the facilitating part? Hands up. Who wants to share? Okay, Joy?
Yeah, it was a very interesting dynamics when I facilitate, because I can see how the mother and the daughter dynamic is. The mother wants to be there, but there is something invisible, like for her to push away the daughter, yet the daughter is longing for her.
Interesting. So where there was no yes, or there was a yes, or did you try a yes?
There was a yes
From the mother?
from both. From the
From
mother.
both.
Yes, like the
daughter
mother.
also.
had a difficulty to say some of it, but she's ready to say some of it, but not yet ready to say some other things. So if the session was longer, I think we can slowly get her to like express herself more.
Very good.
Interesting, you know.
Very good.
Mm.
Very good. Anybody else? Yoda?
So I consulated for Robin, and Robin chose to meet his father, and it was, yeah, it was quite an interesting dynamic because the child, in this case, who's Robin, is seeking more support from the father, but then the father has a position where he loves him dearly and very much, but he's afraid of suffocating him with his love. That's why he's keeping a distance. So there's a feeling from the child that the father is distant. So what happened was that I asked the child to first the father to acknowledge the feelings of the child, and that and that's where the yes is. And then I moved on to the child asking for support, which is where the please came in. And then, yeah, that was the direction that it went.
Great. Sounds great. Yeah. So obviously this was an exercise, but you all see you are right into a constellation. You can't avoid it because the field is jumping in, even if it's just for a split second. And in a situation that you have described, if it would be a constellation in a workshop situation, then the father would have had a dynamic with somebody else, because this word doesn't want to suffocate the son. Was very strong, like that has power, and so you would go with that. You would find the dynamic, because obviously the son is representing somebody else. So there is an actual suffocating dynamic in this family system, most likely. So you would go on the lookout for that. If you have words like this, these are always hints from the morphic field. Really important. And sometimes you can ask. Sorry, Robin. Yeah. Go.
Sorry,
We're talking about
so
you
in
actually.
Sorry, I can just have to jump in here.
Yeah.
About me. Okay, but no, I mean in that situation, so would Yoda then need to go to my father's maternal lineage? It could go up that way.
So go the next generation, right, Maya?
Or more, yeah. Or more, yeah.
So always choose the mother if there's a disruption, or
no. I mean, yes, you were looking at your mother, Robin, right?
No, father.
You were looking at your father.
Yeah.
And the father said he doesn't want to say, so the father's line would be more likely. You have to test it, but the father's line would be more likely.
Yeah.
And do you call the father's mother or the father's father? If there's a disrupted movement, usually there.
Both. You need to see where, or even not even the parents of them, because if I think of suffocating, that doesn't need to be a mother-parent situation. It can, but it can also be another family member. Not necessarily, victim perpetrator.
Yeah. But we're kind of like a detective, right? Trying to find where that root lies, right, in that disruption.
Absolutely, that's the fun part of it. Yeah. Do you like crime? Watch crime? Very helpful.
Some of them like Korean crime shows.
If they are not horrible, of course. Yeah. Like
I'm sure all of us here have watched CSI for a time. No, yeah, that's great. Anybody else wants to share?
Actually, just a quick one. I was also we had one chance to I was the facilitator for Joyce and Yoda.
Mhm.
So Joyce chose Yoda to represent her mother, and the mother, I mean, in this case, Yoda expresses there are some feelings of what is it, guilt? Yeah, Yoda, yeah, guilt, and all that. But then, of course, there still needs to be acknowledgement there, right? First, but is it actually when he said guilt? Is it supposed to? If you have more time, of course, you have to. It's supposed to be originating from somewhere, right? That guilt.
Yeah, normally, yeah.
Yeah. But so normally in a longer period, you would have to trace it back where it's
Mm.
from.
Yeah.
Okay, but in that span, of course, we just have to, like
Yeah,
acknowledge each other.
it's an
Yeah.
exercise, but yeah, you know, you already, you can, you see how the morphic field always jumps on every opportunity to,
Mm.
so you cannot even make things up. You cannot even demonstrate things because it's always an actual case,
Mm.
because the
So
morphic
the
field
hints
functions.
are disruptive words that show a disruptive energy, right? Like, for example, suffocated, guilt, scattered, and maybe
No,
work
that's not the
from
sense. So when I hear this, so it's just something that comes over, a lot of time. Your observation is so precise, let's put it that way, that you see what words that have been talked about or they come up have a certain quality to it, that are coming from the fear and that are leading you in the right direction. No, guilt is not a strong word at all. It just sounds so strong. It's a very weak emotion. But the word suffocating is so precise that I can firmly see what's happening or what has happened just through practice observation. So when you start working and you do a lot of workshop and you attend a lot of workshop, this is what you do. You start to see these things because you are practicing observation. And then better where it's worth going like a detective, and where it's where it's not worth going because it's a waste of time.
How do you know who to call after you hear such specific word? And then, I mean, how do you know who do you call in a family dynamic?
Like a representative or
A
like
representative, like how you say, okay, let's call the mother and father of the father or
yeah.
the sibling. Like, how do you know who to call as a representative?
Well, I don't know these things. It's another information of the field that comes.
Oh,
So you call the Ghostbusters, of course. So how can I say? You could, if you're advanced. I wouldn't recommend it to do that when you start. But if you're advanced, you could just jump right onto the suffocation, and don't worry about who that is. You can put literally there a victim of suffocation.
Victim perpetrator. Oh.
You could, but I wouldn't recommend it because you might get lost in this. So as a beginner facilitator, you really want to know where you are, so you want to put up generations and see, that's recommended, definitely. So don't jump too quickly. But in the end, that's what you would do. It saves a lot of time. Remember our speed constellation? Well, there was not much of a constellation with Yoda, 4 minutes. You even more complex constellations can be dealt within 15 to 20 minutes. If you, but that's not what we do in the course. It's just when you ask me how I do it, it's not necessarily what I teach you to do.
okay.
No.
So as a beginner, you will just start from one generation and then go above and above. You just
So
take step by step kind of thing.
exactly, step by step, and you take your time. And this constellation can take 1.5 hours when you begin. Well, that's just the way it is. Yeah. Otherwise, you would never learn it. Remember, the apprentice plumber takes 3 times of the time to fix the leak than the master, right? So and it will still dribble a little bit. So so what you would do in this case of that Robin has or that Yoda has said, where Robin was the child and there was the father, right?
The father.
And then the word suffocating. Then you would ask to represent for the mother and father of the father to come up and see where the dynamic is, and then you would dismiss one side and work with the other and see if there's another generation involved or not, you know. So yeah, step by step. Yeah, so anybody else wants to share? Or maybe not after the break. Let's have our break first. It's a 9:15 here, 3:15 where you are. So 10 minutes, 25. Yeah, okay. Resume. So where, sorry, I have to go back with my slides. Okay, so let me just, so that it's on the video recording, we don't need to go through everything again. I just bring it up so it's on the recording. So these are the yes and partnerships at the beginning, where I said they need to be said. There are 2 sets of them, and you can pause your recording, obviously, and look at them longer. These are these sentences. And then we have the ones in relationships, which is romantic relationship in this case. No, we did. This is now what we talked about. Relationship to the ancestors. I honor you and your deaths. I give you a place in my heart. That's from you, from the person to the ancestor. To God, we talked about that. Unfortunately, our interesting discussion is not recorded now, not meant to be. So, okay. And then we have the victim. Now, victim perpetrator are, yeah, 1/3 of your work is to reconcile or reunite the victim and the perpetrator. So the yes of a perpetrator to a victim is, now I see your pain. Because interestingly, the perpetrators do not see the suffering of their victims when they commit the crime. That is an interesting observation that you will have in family constellation. It is different to what we see in our crime movies. But in real life, it looks like the perpetrator would not be even able to like kill somebody if they would actually see or feel the same pain. They don't. Yeah. So the movement from the perpetrator towards the victim is, now I see your pain. That's a yes, an acknowledgement, right? That it was painful for the victim. And on the other hand, a victim says yes to a perpetrator by the words, which are very odd, and this is why betelling was so controversial, but they are healing, and we only go with what heals. You belong to me, I belong to you, we are the same. Right? And that makes no sense, and that doesn't make sense, doesn't need to make sense. It is just the right thing to say in this dynamic. And you will see it. And just try it out. The advantage giver is like the little brother or sister of the advantage disadvantage giver, little brother, little sister of the victim perpetrator dynamic, has quite similarities with the sentences of resolution. So the disadvantage giver, which would be like the perpetrator, says to the advantage giver, I'm honoring my depth to you, because they took something that didn't belong to them. Yeah. So they are honoring that they are, it's not balanced. They have to give it back. They have to give something back. They have a debt. Yeah. That would be from disadvantage giver to advantage giver, and the other way around would be, and that's another odd sentence like the victim sentence, but it makes sense when they say it. Now I see your desperation. Because the one who's taking somebody else's life, not physically, but materially, right, is desperate in some way or the other to do that. That's a similarity to the victim perpetrator situation. So you just need to learn the sentences, and when the dynamic comes up, apply them, and you'll be surprised how much they move the souls. Okay, now we have another 45 minutes to talk about dynamics in family systems, because this is what we work with, and we will start to look at them now. And the good news is there are only 3 main dynamics in family systems. 3 main dynamics, which we talk about, plus the interrupted movement towards the mother, which is not a dynamic, which is a trauma. So a dynamic is different to that. A dynamic requires 3 persons involved. Okay, let's look at it. So we have, remember the first module, we have the orders of love, and through belonging, conscience, guilt, and destiny are formed 3 basic dynamics in a family system, which are, 1 is called, in German, obviously translated from German, is now reparation or atonement, whatever suits you better, for my sins. That's what we talk about today. Then there is a second dynamic in family systems, which is rather me than you, lieber ich als du. That is part 2 next week. And then the third dynamic in family systems is I follow you. And that's it. These 3 dynamics. Isn't that easy? Easy to learn, easy to memorize, easy to work with. So it can either be at either one of the 3. So all these 3 dynamics are a breach of the orders of love and will come up in the family constellation. So we are talking about the first one, reparation for my sins. It's a violation of the first orders of love, of belonging, conscience, and guilt. So why is that? First of all, what are sins? That's a good question. We have to think, when we think about sins, we have to think about guilt and ego. Because if somebody says, I have sinned, what does it really mean? They are judging themselves to have done something that they could have otherwise done differently, right? So they had a choice. They are thinking. And they chose something which was against the conscience of the group, the family they were born into. So it is perceived as something they need to be guilty for, and therefore it becomes a sin, so to speak. Can you follow me so far? Good. Okay. So on a higher consciousness level and working with the morphogenetic field, we all know things are what they are, right? We are innocent children born into a family dynamic that will play up somehow. And because in family constellation, we're not talking about moral decisions and law and order, like law. We talk about order, but not law to follow. We are talking about the orders of love, right? Which are more important than the orders of the law, of the man-made law. So people who think they have sins are in a kind of a super ego state. They think it's all under their control. They had a choice, they didn't do that, they did that, and it's all their fault, and so on. And sometimes this is really disguised as if they would be the victims, but in truth, they are always really ego-driven perpetrators. Right. So this all is something that is against the first order of love, right? Because they belong to a family system, they have their place there, and that's what they're supposed to do, if you will, right? And that needs to be acknowledged. So what we have here is the dynamic is that somebody is in this dynamic that feels shame and guilt and feels like a sinner towards somebody else or more than one. And then we have a combination of this dynamic with somebody else of the descendants who is doing the same. And that's where the problem starts, because they have done nothing, right? They just feel like that. That's what we then have in a family constellation. So this, what do we say, and what are the healing words? What are the healing movements? That's actually what we need to ask ourselves. And how do we see that? So, first of all, reparation for my sins is a dynamic where you always see a disease. Somebody comes to you with a disease. And it's often autoimmune diseases. And if you want to look at my latest blog post on the website, where I talk about autoimmune diseases, it's all about guilt and shame. So it's all about this dynamic preparations for my sins. I have done something, I'm responsible, I can't make it good, now I have to have a disease. Or some of my descendants in the family system has to atone for that, right? That's a very common dynamic when you look at a disease, autoimmune disease, for example. Accidents, and then also this dynamic is often combined with I follow you, which we look at later. Because this is repeated from generation to generation. Suicides are a very good example for that, but also accidents. For example, one really puzzling example is when I was a lawyer in Germany, a young lawyer, I was founding a law firm with a 10-year-older established lawyer, a new firm, and he had 4 young children, 4 boys. Great man, very happy family. 1 year after, he died in an accident, in his mid-40s. Left 4 children, 4 boys. He was a great man. He was really great man. There's, it is completely karmic that he was dying in an accident. I talked to the widow, or I heard about the widow 20 years later, or a little bit about that. When her oldest son turned 18, he had a car accident and died. Right? Now, this family has not done a family constellation, and I don't know anything about the dynamics, but I now know that he has atoned for somebody's sins, being entangled with somebody of the ancestors. And because it wasn't cleared, nobody worked with that, nobody did family constellation or anything, his son did the same. And one of the 3 remaining sons, when they marry and they have children, one will do the same. And they have an accident, It's not that they're not even, they're not even putting hand on themselves, but this is kind of, if you will, the hand of God or the hand of the family dynamic that will sort that out. That's what they do. So that was very dramatic, and it is probably still to this day. And that is a very good example for a unseen dynamic reparation for my sins. Suicide is very, very obvious, a reparation for my sins. You don't need to look anywhere else, really. If you find there's a suicide in the family constellation. And often the client will come and say, and probably admit then they have suicidal thoughts. So always look there. So it is either the source of this dynamic is either in this person, so they have done something. Remember the example I gave you with the psoriasis that went after 20 years after her first constellation, when we looked at the dog, actually the dog she left behind when she moved out of Switzerland to New Zealand. That was a reparation for my sins, right? She felt guilt in herself, like that in her own lifetime. And then there was this other, and that's all in the blog post, this example. There's this other case where somebody with psoriasis did this constellation, and in the constellation it showed up that the mother has left somebody else behind to marry the father of the client, and felt guilty for that. And so that was an entanglement with the same dynamic. So when you have this dynamic, when you see this dynamic, you always have to look if it's originated in the person or is it an entanglement with another generation. It's either or. So it's not even less than 3. It's only a choice of 2, right? So even easier. If it's an entanglement with another person, then there is always, why would they do that? Because there is this deep love. Now, in this example with the accident, with the car accident, the eldest son felt this deep love, unexpressed, obviously, for his father that he lost when he was 4 years old, or 6 or something like that. And the only way to express this love, it's all unconsciously, obviously, it's all in the soul, buried, is to follow, to do the same. That's how an entanglement works. The source is always a deep love. So what is the atonement here? It is to look at the the atonement is probably the wrong word. The real atonement, the healing movement is here, that this person look at the dead, the one who's the original one who is atoning for sins, and realize the destiny with love, right? Either oneself, for oneself or for the other family. So this is acknowledging, yes, this is what it was. This is not mine. This is theirs, right? And yes, I can love this person, this family member, but I don't need to follow it, right? I don't need to atone. That's the healing movement. It's all a yes. It all is acknowledged. Once it's in the open and it's acknowledged and it's said, the dynamic ends. That is the power of the word yes. That's all there is. It's just to apply the word in the right moment to the right person to say it out loud. And as you know, it does not even need to be the person, it can be a representative to say it. It will all have the same effect in the healing movement of the family system. So finding the real victim perpetrator, if you have a victim perpetrator situation in this dynamic reparation for my sins, which is likely, right? Where why else would somebody feel guilt or shame? Well, there must be something happen somewhere down the line. They have to face each other and they have to realize and they have to release the entangled person from their duty because they don't need them anymore. The entangled person is just showing the way for the souls to find each other. No? And then the entangled person is released. So if the victim perpetrator can say yes to each other, the entangled person has no interest in following anymore. That's what you see. That's the beauty of the work. So a sin is the feeling personal guilt, and as we know, guilt is a very low frequency feeling that has its roots in some identification with ego and the morals of the family, and so the family conscience. That's where it's originated. So it's a feeling that is feeling of guilt, like feeling. We have a lot of releasing in family constellation, mainly through tears, right? The lowest vibrating emotions like guilt and shame do not need to be released. They just need to be let go, right? Where you have to start to release feelings, and we will talk about the module 4 when you talk about the frequencies of emotions, is where grieving starts. That's high up the ladder. From there on, these emotions are, so to speak, real and needs to be released. Emotions are vibrating lower than that are not real. They are man-made, mind-made. You know, and so you can't release them. So you cannot release a feeling of fear and guilt through crying, for example. Not fear. What am I saying? Shame and guilt through crying. That's not possible. So this emotion is coming from an ancestor combined with rather me than you. And okay, so that's the other combination of dynamics that we see. It's not I follow you, so rather me than you. So somebody, and we talk about these dynamics in the next 2 weeks, the other ones, just quickly mention it, that the combination of this are always possible and likely, right? It's not only one dynamic often in the family system. So Joyce, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just wondering, let go and release, they sound the same. So how do you know what's
the difference?
Yeah, what's the difference? And then
I make an example. Yeah.
Okay.
So start with that. So I make an example. When you have feelings that need to be released, mostly through crying, tears, sometimes through shouting or shaking or any kind of physicality, right? Where you need to get rid of these energies. That's a release of this emotion. A let go of the emotion is like a hot potato. She's just hot. You just have to open your hand and it falls out of your hand. It's just, you know, it's just letting go. It's just let it go. Let go this idea that you are responsible for the suffering of the world.
Does that only happen with clarity?
Yeah,
like it's
that's
like
happening. Yeah,
the realization.
Exactly.
Like,
it's a realization.
Like you just can't deny it is there, but
Yeah.
getting to that clarity might take time, no?
Yeah, but since this is yeah, I mean there might be emotions, additional emotions of grief that can be released, but this emotion of fear and what am I saying? Fear, guilt and shame cannot be released. That's exactly that. You have a realization. You let it go. It's just an instant, and the body is not involved in that.
Oh. So sorry, because again, going back
going in the mind. It's a mind thing. It's a realization in the mind. The body doesn't need to get rid of it.
Like if they just cannot get it, like in the case of, let's say, a religious person or whatever, they just, it's been a deep program.
Yeah, that's it. Then
That's it. There's no clarity because they have to believe it, right? Like a hot potato belief.
Exactly.
Or choose to believe and then act on it.
And suffer, holding on to a hot potato. Yeah. But that's
how do we assist? Or that is their destiny.
That is just
or
if they want to. That's
whatever.
the onion layer thing. If they want to be free of that, if they want to step out of their belief system, which is captivating them with these lowest vibrational emotions of fear and guilt and shame, then that's a process, and they have to continue with the work. They have to come and shed one layer of onion after the other until they are ready, until they are there. This is not done with, well, it could be, I will never say never, but it's very unlikely this is done with one workshop.
Because it's what's meant to be an personal awakening, right?
Yeah, and if not, then not, then that's how the world is. Lots of people who are not doing the work. I just had a discussion with one other trainee. She was so enraged after the last workshop, saying, "This makes me so angry. Why is not everybody doing the work?" Thinking, I mean, you might have thinking of her family and friends, and she was really angry about that.
So what do you mean by the work? The work means
the work, family constellation.
Okay.
Yeah. And you might feel one day as well with certain people, but you have to let that go.
Okay, so my next question is, when you say shame and guilt are man-made, it's not, what do you say, not real emotion?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So grief and above, they are real. How do you differentiate those? Like how? So it's just shame and guilt. That's all in the head.
Yeah.
But the rest of it, it's from the heart. You said. So you're saying?
Yeah, it's in the body. It's an emotion. It's also made by the mind, but it's manifested in the body.
Oh, okay.
So you can get rid of it, or you can release it through the body as well.
But guilt can also manifest in the body, like the psoriasis that you were talking about.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. But of course. So all right, now this is probably too theoretical. Not necessarily need to be so theoretically. When you see the emotion of guilt and shame in a family constellation, they will not cry.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that is how you actually see it. Let's put it that way. When they cry, they have overcome their ego mind and are in the heart. Okay, and this is where you can work with them. All right. So that let's just take this, because we are going too much in the theory of things, and that's probably too complicated, and the work is not so complicated.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Yoda, do you want to say something? No. Okay, no, just because you're not muted. Okay. All right. So what's coming up? More of this. So when you look at guilt and shame, and this is why it's so low vibration of an emotion is, if you ask yourself what is there denied there, then it is a relationship with the victim. They are not, and that's what you see in the family constellation. They don't want to look at the victim, or they deny that there is a victim even. Right? And that is then the healing movement, is to see that and come back to this a very subtle, cute almost, but still very strong case of the dog, where this with this severe psoriasis. It was she denied herself to look at the dog as a victim of her moving away. Yeah, and that's it. No. So what needs to be acknowledged, The sin is forming a lasting relationship, eye contact and acknowledgement, not looking away, doing something good to honor the victim. That's all you want to aim for, right? Find this yes towards the victim somehow. You know, you see what's working and what's not working. Not trying to pay reparation for a sin with a disease, or to live alone, or to have accidents or something like that. You know, that's just a substitute or surrogate for looking at the victim and doing something for the victim. And that is this is why family constellation training is also life school, because this applies to all of us. So when does this dynamic happens? So of course we always have the abortion cases. Then we have the war situation. I don't know about in your area about the war. I'm not so versed in your history, to be quite frank. What is a great? Did you had a great war in the last 200 years?
Yeah, we were part of the Second World War.
You were, eh? Was it severe? Did you had many victims? Like, was there a lot of blood
Yes.
on? Yeah. Okay. So that in Germany, obviously, you can imagine. This comes up a lot. Like the ground is such as through this 2 world wars saturated with blood, so to speak. So in every family constellation, or from Bert Hellinger, and also from mine and others I saw, is a lot of war victims often. So you might have that as well. Is there any other war other than the Second World War?
Well,
So
we
you
were
didn't have the
colonized by
first
the
one.
Dutch. We were colonized by the Dutch. So there's a lot of seeking freedom.
How long were the Dutch there?
300 years?
Almost.
300. Oh, okay.
Almost 300.
And actually, before that, our ancestry lineage were converted a lot. So originally we were Hindus, and then Islam came, and then so
From the
even
Dutch,
within
Islam?
no, even
No.
before, so like the Javanese Empire or the Malay archipelago, we've had that movement as well. But it doesn't happen. Some didn't happen violently, some did. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure about Indonesian culture, but history. So resistance could have been there. That could be. I don't know. Is that a dynamic?
Victims are normally dead and have suffered.
Well,
and when we talk, yeah.
The most recent for us, or for Indonesia anyway, it was the 1998 riots, where there was a civil conflict brought up by sort of the government versus the people, and it did lead to the persecution of a specific community, which is the Indonesian community of Chinese descent, and there were a lot of deaths.
Okay. Oh yeah.
There was basically the Indonesian equivalent of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. Yeah. So, but it's not acknowledged. It's not spoken on a national level. But yes.
Oh, but then it would be even stronger. That would probably come up in your constellations. Yeah.
Racism, is that something as well? Where, I mean, that's
if it causes the death of people. So what the family soul is with concerned is, like in general, is when life is precious, right? And we talk about that in module 4 on a spiritual level, how complicated it is to create this life experience for a soul. And if this life is taken prematurely away, on one hand, it's a destiny, and on the other hand, it is a severe interruption of the process of, what the energy that has been put in there. So the family soul needs to balance it out. It's not just okay, that's what it is, we just leave it, because then we wouldn't have any reason for family constellations, because there would no disease and illnesses anywhere, or accidents or anything. Everybody would be happy. But that's not the case. It has such a severe impact on the family soul that we need to look at it and solve it in order to go ahead. And so it's practically every time life at stake when you work somewhere. Like there's always, and not necessarily be violent, like it could be often is it a lost child, miscarried child. It can be natural death as well, but then the family member is not acknowledged. So it's a breach of the orders of love, the second order of love, right? No, the first order of love, the who belongs, because it's not acknowledged that this child belongs to it. Victims are not acknowledged to belong to the family of the perpetrators. Or perpetrator, or victim families do not acknowledge that the perpetrator belongs to their family system, although it is the case. So all these is forming the imbalance that we then have, that then there's the need for us to work with this. Yeah.
So Maya, conscience, you don't have to feel guilty to have a conscience, right? Someone that once facilitated family constellation said that conscience is just a rebalancing of this energy. So let's say in Japan, there was World War II, and then there was a tsunami that happened, and that, so that's like a generation choosing to rebalance or something like that. So this is like a conscience of the group to rebalance that, because there was no right or wrong. So is conscience, conscience is like you feel, it's like a reminder, or you can do better, or is that super ego too?
So the conscience we are talking is about Hellinger conscience is the one in 3 levels, and watch the recordings again from module 1 when we talk about that. 3 levels: the personal, the family, and the spiritual conscience, right? And the first 2 conscience are leading to an imbalance in the family system, right? So when you're talking about a country, there's also group conscience, like the Japanese, for example. They have a group conscience. But these are things, actually, I need to see them in a constellation to know what's going on there. This is a very practical work. You don't overthink it, right? And just because in some constellation something came up, that does not mean that it ever be the same in another. That's the other thing, right? So never jump to conclusions because you see a dynamic in one constellation and then think, oh, I apply that to the next one. That is not the work, because the work is always going with the observation through connecting with the morphic field. Okay, so what heals is here, dedication, devotion, and commitment, right? And any kind of words that are expressing that in the form of yes are healing, right? And they will come in a family constellation situation naturally. Often the representative wants to say them, so you don't need to suggest them, no? Because once the dynamic has been cleared, then this comes up. This is available as an information from the morphic field to everybody, including the representatives. Feeling guilty as a substitute to avoid going through the pain and doing what's needed. That's a sentence of Bert Hellinger. And that's a really strong sentence. And it's worth, if you want, in your self-studies to contemplate about it. Feeling guilty is a substitute to avoid going through the pain and doing what's needed. I'll leave you with that. Okay, so we have 10 minutes for an exercise, and this is gonna be a guided meditation. I will guide you through this, and it has to do with this emotion of guilt. And so we prepare for that. So find a good a seat with an unsupported spine. Relax your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Relax your eyes. Feel the weight of your buttocks on the chair, the weight of the soles of feet on the earth. Feel connected, carried by the earth. Go with your awareness to your breath, wherever your breath is felt, at the nose, in the lungs, or in the belly. And stay there observing how the breath is coming and going. Just observe the breath with no judgment. There is no thoughts, no emotions. There's no yesterday and no tomorrow. It's just you being aware of your breath. And then you go with your awareness to the source of the breath. Where is the air coming from that you breathe in? The first breath a baby takes is an inhale. The breath is not or belongs not to you. It's outside of you. It's the air you breathe in. It's what you share with every other being on the world. We all breathe the same breath. It all starts with the same inhale. In fact, you are not breathing. You are receiving the breath of life as long as you live. And when you decide to not receive the breath of life anymore, that is when you do your last exhale and let go of the breath of life. And in this breath, you are connected with every other being. You are the same to every other being. There is no one greater or lesser. Everybody receives the breath of life for as long as it meant to be. And with this breath of life comes destiny and all the tasks you've been given. And it all fulfills a certain goal that you might not be aware of. And you don't need to be aware of it neither. What is required from you is to receive the breath of life. What is required is to say yes to the breath of life and whatever it carries with it. And in this yes, there is no room for any negative emotion. And no such thing as guilt or shame has any relevance. And with this feeling of connection and being in the right place at the right time, with everything it entails, the whole piece of cake we call life experience, you come back into your room, feel the heaviness of your body on your chair, relaxed and clear in your mind. Deepen your breath. Take some exhale, open mouth exhale. And then in your own time, open your eyes. So, would you like to unmute? Anybody wants to say something? Or to share the experience? Or are you all happy? Good. Very good.
Thank you, Maya. We're all enjoying the stillness of the universe.
Wonderful. Okay, so I will leave you there with it, and I see you in 1 week. And
Thank you,
don't forget
Maya.
to look in the calendar and the dates there and synchronize
you,
it with your
Maya.
calendar, so you know what's coming up, because there are a couple of meetings outside of our group meetings that are coming. Ciao.
Okay.
Bye bye, Maya.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Maya.
Good
Bye.
Thank you,
evening.
Maya.
Bye.
Thank you, Maya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.